to In Focus with Ejaz Haider. Tonight we begin by discussing Prime Minister Imran Khan's three-day visit to Saudi Arabia. Relations between Riyadh had seen a dip for several reasons, but most importantly on the issue of Riyadh's reluctance to convene an extraordinary meeting of the OIC foreign ministers to discuss India's illegal annexation of occupied Kashmir. For reasons that we shall discuss tonight, Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has felt his waxen wings feel the heat, with certain other developments, including the electoral ouster of former US President Donald Trump. With Trump gone, MBS's direct line to the White House, Jared Kushner, is also gone. But has the Prime Minister's visit achieved much in terms of substance? Doesn't seem like it. The joint statement is high on diplomacies, but low on substance. There is a mild reference to J&K in the 11th paragraph of the statement. It reads, and I quote, His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince, welcomed the recent understanding reached between the military authorities of Pakistan and India regarding ceasefire at the line of control, which is based on a 2003 understanding between Pakistan and India. The two sides emphasized the importance of dialogue between Pakistan and India to resolve the outstanding issues between the two countries, especially Jammu and Kashmir dispute, to ensure peace and stability in the region. Unquote. Paragraph 15's first subpoint refers to agreement on establishment of Saudi-Pakistan Supreme Coordination Council. Riyadh already has a joint strategic partnership council with India. That framework was established during Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Saudi Arabia in October 2019. The council is meant to provide the framework under which bilateral cooperation across all sectors will be arranged. This is with reference to the Joint Strategic Partnership Council between India and Saudi Arabia. There are other points which we shall also discuss this evening, but it's time to get to our panel. I'm joined by Ambassador Najmuddin Shaikh, Foreign Secretary of Pakistan, and Ambassador Tasnim Aslam, former Special Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Let me begin with Ambassador Shaikh here. Ambassador Shaikh, what do you think in terms of substance of this joint statement? And also, since memories are generally short, a bit of recap about why relations had begun to sour.
I think relations began to sour because of Saudi expectations that we would abandon our long-held position of not becoming a party to any intra-Muslim dispute, and saying that in the event of any intra-Muslim dispute, we would play the role of mediators. We would try to bring the parties together, but we would not take sides. In retrospect, it is, of course, clear that not only was our decision in keeping with our traditional position, but it was also the position that needed to be taken if peace was to be brought to Yemen, and if there was to be some degree of reconciliation between between Saudi Arabia on the one hand and Iran on the other. There was a clear understanding, or at least an understanding in Saudi Arabia that President Biden's administration was no longer going to be playing the same role that it had in the past. This is not to say, in my view, this is not to say that President Biden does not value the association and the partnership, and I deliberately say partnership, with Prince Mohammed bin Salman and with Saudi Arabia, because it is a key country, a fact that he has acknowledged time and again. And again, in terms of the U.S. administration's continued dependence on allowing arms sales, that it will continue to be a major market for the American defense industry. Now, that's the
right. Right. So this is a good recap. Of course, you talked about our sort of reluctance, and we had a parliamentary resolution which said that we will stay out of this Yemen chaos. But there's also the issue of the extraordinary session of the foreign ministers meeting at the OIC, and that did not happen. But the second part of the question was reference to, as I said, the joint statement seems to be high on diplomacies, but kind of low on substance. So give me your view of that.
Ajaz, I think that it's as high on substance as you could reasonably expect. They've talked about augmenting the military and security agreements between the two countries. They've talked about setting up this Supreme Council and using this structure of the Supreme Council meeting at regular intervals to try and further augment the relationship. They've indicated the framework of the areas in which they would want to further their investment and their collaboration with Pakistan in economic matters. I was impressed with the fact that they talked about hydropower, they talked about solar power, they talked about other areas in which we could cooperate and in which the the Saudi fund would be available for investment and collaboration with Pakistan. Now, this is important to us because in the ultimate analysis, we have to talk about exactly what we are going to be able to do for our own people in terms of economic advancement. We need investment very badly. We need investment on terms that are not too onerous. And frankly, with Saudi Arabia's backing in our corner, I think that and perhaps in tandem with the backing you now have from the IMF, that we are able to finance our requirements and not just our day-to-day requirements, but our investment requirements in a manner that would be most beneficial to us and beneficial to the investor who's coming in to do so.
So that's an interesting way of putting it, but let me pull in Ambassador Tasnim Aslam here. Ambassador Aslam, so we know when relations began to sour that Saudi Arabia wanted the loan back. There was also an issue with the oil credit facility that they had extended. So it seems that at the end of the day, the nature of the relationship remains the same. So little Tommy Tucker still has to sing for a supper. And we also, as Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh implied, the cash flows and these credit facilities are important for our economy because, so far we haven't really been able to do much as far as the structural readjustment of our economy is concerned. So give me your sense of how you look at this statement and where relations might be headed now.
Well, Ambassador Najmuddin Sheikh pointed out a number of factors that pulled us apart and then brought us together. You can't look at Saudi Arabia and UAE separately because they have been very closely coordinating it. Then publicly, the demand to return their money and also that we have been helping Pakistan and in a way, relations with India and some of the initiatives were quite in our face. So all that brought a distancing and cooling of relations. But then Trump administration went out and he started looking for alternatives. And that's when I think some channels were open. Thirdly, they also need Pakistan's defense cooperation. And I'm a bit intrigued that normally when the Prime Minister, head of state, government visit, it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Foreign Minister or Foreign Secretary would travel and negotiate the documents and what is to be achieved from that visit and managing its media and public side as well. Then on Kashmir, has Saudi Arabia changed its position? They have come around to accepting Pakistan's point of view, Or have we moved away from our position that we held for so long? I'm not really clear about that. So I think we are coming back to the relationship. I think we are back on track till we do the next thing that would upset MBS.
Right. Let me go back to Ambassador Sheikh here. So, Ambassador Sheikh, the paragraph 11 that I read out in full from the joint statement, and I'm going to read out a line once again with reference to what Ambassador Tasnim Aslam said. Is Saudi Arabia now in line with our position on Kashmir, or have we accepted sort of, pedaling back? So the line that seems to be, to me, to be important is that dialogue between, firstly, the reference to the ceasefire at the line of control, which is just simply a tactical thing, and then the importance of dialogue between Pakistan and India, which clearly emphasizes the bilateral, sort of focus, even though since August 5th, 2019, we've constantly been talking about and referring to the UN Security Council and UNCIP resolutions with reference to Jammu and Kashmir. So what do you think? Is this, sort of implied reference to bilateralism something that seems to sort of dilute our position since the illegal annexation?
Well, look, I think you have to look at the ceasefire that agreement that we arrived at. It's significant that this is not a repetition of the ceasefire agreement of 2003, where there were two unilateral statements by India and Pakistan respectively, and from there emerged a ceasefire. This time it's an agreement between the Directors General of military operations on both sides. And that this agreement was really an agreement between the two countries. Now, that particular agreement one should not think of as being a ceasefire alone, because that ceasefire agreement also talks about addressing each other's concerns. And obviously, the language
addressing
used
each other's concerns at the line of control.
No.
Addressing each other's concerns at the line of control.
I don't think that. I think that you are narrowing the interpretation to being concerns at the line of control. I think what it says allows it much greater flexibility or much greater maneuverability than you are attributing to that statement. I don't think that it says that this relates to concerns on the line of control alone. So these are concerns on both sides. So I think that we should look at that agreement in that particular light, and we should think in terms of why we agreed to it. We should also think in terms of what we are doing in terms of granting status to Gilgit-Baltistan. These are you have to see how things are progressing on both sides, and then sit down and do an analysis of where it leads one or it leads the other. One also has to look at what the situation within Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir is, and where are its leaders currently, those who are able, because most of them are incarcerated, are not allowed to speak to the media, but those who are there, what are they saying, and what is the general atmosphere? Admittedly, the resistance to the Indian occupation continues to be fierce, and frankly, that resistance and that degree of rejection of the occupation is going to determine how India proceeds with its plans for Kashmir, the plans that it is trying to implement and plans that it has for the future. Those have to be examined against that particular facet. But the point is that you have to also see what you have been doing at this end alongside what they've been doing there, and see whether how this will be perceived internationally. Frankly, at this time, I do not think that you have in any way abandoned the line of control, the UN resolutions. So I think that we should be clear that right now with Saudi Arabia's largest embassy, the largest embassy in India is the Saudi embassy. It has made no secret of the fact that it sees investment opportunities there, that it owns part of a refinery which it is now seeking to expand, that it thinks in terms of South Asia as an area for substantial investment, and that it wants this area to be tension-free so that investment can proceed and yield the results that it wants. I think partly the Indian attitude has been determined by the fact that not only Saudi Arabia, but the UAE, the other GCC countries, all of which have a capital that they wish to invest, and they wish to invest in South Asia in addition to the investments that they have in the West. They want to see a tension-free area in which their investment is relatively safe and will provide some returns.
I completely agree with your point. On the first point, I suspect you and I will have a bilateral away from this forum, because at this forum, obviously, I cannot present my point of view. But thank you so much. That was Ambassador Najmuddin Shaikh speaking with us. Let me go back to Ambassador Tasnim Aslam. Ambassador Tasnim Aslam, Ambassador Sheikh's point that the Saudis want a tension-free area, of course, and they want investment, and the rest of it is absolutely correct. There is enough evidence now to suggest that MBS has been interested in investments, and obviously also has been trying to, an IPO wanted to have an IPO for Aramco in New York, but that didn't happen for other reasons. So yes, so that's correct. But there are structural reasons for why there are tensions in this region, and those structural reasons, of course, need to be understood very clearly. And I'm afraid that it seems to me that the government of Pakistan had started fast peddling a process which was unlikely to go anywhere, and I think it's good that they have begun to soft pedal it now, because I don't see any kind of concessions coming from the other side, and I don't think that we will see any concessions in the near future also. What do you think of that assessment?
If you look at the maps, in UN maps and generally old maps, apart from certain districts of Gilgit and Baltistan, they were not part of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. That is one. Secondly, it has been said very clearly that this is provisional, and this is to help address the issues that people, administrative and development issues that the people of GB are facing because of their unclear status. On the contrary, what has happened in IOK is a colony has been re-annexed and re-occupied, and that colony is under a state of siege where people are not allowed. We are talking about lockdown, everyone else. They have been under lockdown for more than a year and a half now. And yet, it has not broken theirs. They are not accepting what India has done. How can Pakistan do it? I think there have been some hints that perhaps we can set Kashmir dispute aside and move on other fronts. Well, how can that be possible given the current Indian policy? If you set
and I totally agree. Ambassador Tasnim Aslam, stay with me. I completely agree with you, especially after having taken a position, and also seeing very clearly that the Indian government, which is in occupation of Kashmir, has made absolutely no concessions at all. But let me go to the ground and seek the views of someone who is living in this colony, as you call it. And joining me now is Gowhar Geelani, who is an eminent Kashmiri journalist and author of Kashmir, Rage and Reason. Mr. Geelani, thank you as always for being on the program. The Pakistani officials, including especially Special Assistant to the Prime Minister on National Security, Dr. Moeed Yusuf, has been very clear about what the position on Kashmir is, how this can move forward on the basis of the conditionalities that have been laid down by Pakistan with reference to India creating an enabling environment. So my question is that when there is, absolute clarity about what India needs to do, why is this sense of despondency on the ground that you're speaking of?
I have seen a couple of interviews of Mr. Moeed Yusuf, in which there seems to be, some disconnect between what Mr. Moeed Yusuf said in Karan Thapar's interview and what the foreign minister of Pakistan is saying in multiple interviews. So then he also gave a clarification, and that's the problem. That's what I'm talking about, the messaging. The messaging has been very confusing, and also, a lot of people on the ground think that Pakistan was somehow testing waters in Kashmir with regards to its moving forward with India on other fronts, on trade. There's no, people are not against trade. People are not against trans-Kashmir or trans-India bus service. People do think that when India and Pakistan do come onto the negotiating table, that's the only way that things can actually move forward. But it is Pakistan that had taken this strong position after the annexation on August 5, 2019, when they reduced their diplomatic ties, and also, in response, New Delhi removed most favored nation status.
I get your point. Stay with me. Let me go back to Ambassador Tasnim Aslam. Ambassador Aslam, one of the things that, this has happened with me personally also in terms of, trying to make people understand that 370 is not something that we accept, in the sense that this is part of the Indian constitution. We in Pakistan and also in Azad Kashmir, and you and I both are Azad Kashmiris also, we do not even accept the dubious instrument of accession. However, the precondition that India should reverse the unilateral decision has to do with the fact that by doing what India did on 5th August 2019, it unilaterally sought to change the status quo on the ground, which is violative both of the United Nations Security Council resolutions as well as bilateral arrangements. Now, is it too difficult for people to understand the nuance contained in this position?
Well, I think, yes, people do become confused when you say that Article 70 is not important for us, or 335A is, because these are both Indian Constitution articles. Well, the fact is that these articles flow from the Indian claim that Jammu and Kashmir ceded to India. But at the same time, there was a subtle acknowledgement that this accession was not acceptable, or it did not have the legal validity, and these two articles were put in to protect the special status of occupied Kashmir. Now, with the 35A gone, I think the foreign minister talked about that, and the 370 not giving it so much importance is because 35A guaranteed the status quo in terms of demography. Indians not being able to go there, purchase property and live there and acquire citizenship. In that sense, 35A makes a big difference. 370 it is, in practical terms, it has no validity for us because it substantiates an illegal Indian claim, which is accession. But still, it's a complicated issue for and technical issue for people to understand. So the messaging has been for Kashmiris and for many Pakistanis that he is saying that it doesn't matter to us, it's India's internal matter, as if he has said that IOK is an internal matter of India. That was not, I don't think that was his intention. He was perhaps only talking about P70 in the context of it claiming it being
precisely, but
flowing. Yeah.
Precisely, but here's the point. I mean, given the sensitivity of the issue, perhaps we have to be more careful in sort of formulating what we are going to say, and so there is no confusion on the other side. But thank you so much. That was Ambassador Tasnim Aslam speaking with us. Before I wrap up, let me go back to Gowhar Geelani here. Mr. Geelani, I also wanted to ask you a couple of other things which are a matter of grave concern at this point. Now, India, obviously, as everyone knows, is facing the second COVID-19 wave, which is actually devastating the Indian mainland. Also, it's also a grave concern in occupied Kashmir. Now, given the nature of, and obviously much has been written about the inefficiency of the Modi government in tackling this, there are a number of very senior Kashmiri leaders that have been incarcerated. And apparently, at least 2 or 3 of them have also passed on, having contracted COVID in jail conditions. So give for our viewers, tell us what the situation on the ground is and how grave this concern is with reference to the Kashmiri leadership that is jailed.
As far as the number of people that are jailed, who are political prisoners from Kashmir, their number, according to India's own Ministry of Home Affairs, on the floor of the parliament was 703,057. Which the arrest that happened in preparation to the August 5 decision. But there were other people who were already incarcerated even before those 7,000 plus people were taken into custody, which included the likes of Yasin Malik, Naeem Khan, Shabir Shah, and son-in-law of Sayyid Ali Shah Geelani, Altaf Shah, and his Ayaz Akbar spokesperson, and other Saifullah, lots of Shahidul Islam. Many, thousands of people are still languishing in jails. And the concern is that they are languishing in jails like Uttar Pradesh, which is controlled by Ajay Bisht, also known as, by his acronym, Yogi Adityanath. And there, the situation is very grim as far as the COVID-19 is concerned. People are languishing in Agra jail or Delhi's Tihar jail. And there was a tweet by Ruwa Shah, whose father, Altaf Shah, is languishing in Tihar jail. And on the phone line, his father is said to have, informed her daughter that every day there are a couple of deaths happening inside Tihar jail due to COVID-19, and the situation of the Kashmiri prisoners is very grim. And just to tell you also that we have already lost 2 senior most leaders in terms of Ghulam Muhammad Butt, who was a 65-year-old from North Kashmir who died last year in a jail in India. And now recently, Mr. Ashraf Sehrai, Muhammad Ashraf Khan alias Ashraf Sehrai, who was the chairman of Tehreek-e-Hurriyat, and he also passed away while he was in custody in Udhampur jail. And according to his son, I spoke to his son and I did a story on that. And he said that 10 days ago, the father called his son and said that he was collapsing, he was dizzying, and they were not, the jail authorities were denying him medical attention. And then in the end, on the 10th day, that was on May 5th, he passed away in Jammu, and there are some reports also that he had already passed away in Udhampur jail, and it was merely a formality to take him to Udhampur, Jammu Medical College, Government Medical College, Jammu. So it's a big concern that there are people who are aged and they stand caged, and it's a big issue in Kashmir. And a lot of people were expecting that, despite Supreme Court of India ordering the current government that release all political prisoners, even if it be on interim bail or parole, but nothing has happened as far as Kashmiri prisoners are concerned.
Nothing has happened as Kashmiri prisoners are concerned, which is also why it's extremely important for the government of Pakistan and the policymakers to, whatever they say with reference to Kashmir, also to formulate, words are important, sentences are important, the way you formulate them. So it's important with reference to other relationships, including relationships with Saudi Arabia, with the UAE, to sort of, make statements in a way that do not end up confusing Kashmiris on the other side of this artificial line of control. But thank you so much. That was Gowhar Geelani speaking with us. We shall take a short break and return to discuss the arrest by Indian police of two people in illegal possession of 7.1 kilogram of natural uranium. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus. Last Thursday, Indian police seized over 7 kilograms of natural uranium and arrested two men in the western Maharashtra state for illegally possessing the substance. Many reports, including in India, have referred to the material as highly radioactive. Technically, that is incorrect because natural uranium is weakly radioactive. However, the possession of natural uranium does raise questions about the safety and security of nuclear-related materials. To discuss this issue further, put it in its proper perspective, I am joined by Dr. Naeem Salik, a former brigadier and director, Arms Control and Disarmament Agency at the Strategic Plans Division, and Ambassador Zamir Akram, a former diplomat with long experience of multilateral diplomacy at the Conference on Disarmament. Let me begin with Dr. Salik here. Dr. Salik, sir, tell us the technical part of this, but then we need to get to India's record of safety and security with reference to nuclear and nuclear-related materials.
Basically, the amount of uranium which has been seized is a little over 7 kilograms of natural uranium. In terms of its ability to cause any problems, it is insignificant because we know that in natural uranium, there is 99.3% of uranium-238 and only 0.7% of uranium-235, which is the bomb material. So in this 7 kilogram, in all, there will be 0.049 kilogram of uranium-235, which is a bomb or weapons material. So from that point of view, it is insignificant. You would need at least 2 metric tons of natural uranium to extract 1 bomb worth of highly enriched uranium. That is the technical thing. But the point is that uranium still is a rare material. It is a nuclear material. It's a fissionable material. It's not a fissile material, which is the actual bomb material, uranium-235 or plutonium. It's fissionable material. And these are very sensitive materials and very rarely found. They're not everywhere, and they're very costly. So any kind of pilferage of this material, whether it has any potential for causing havoc or causing any devastation anywhere, it still is symptomatic of the weakness in the safety and security system of India's nuclear materials. And this is not the first incident. There have been incidents in the past as well. The point is not this particular cache, which is 7 kilogram, which has been caught. The more worrying part is what has not been caught. No one knows how much has already leaked through the system or potentially waiting to be leaked out of the system. So that is the more dangerous things. India had committed in the Nuclear Security Summit in in Seoul, that it is going to establish a nuclear a center of excellence for nuclear security, which it failed to fulfill, whereas Pakistan was able to establish an internationally acclaimed Center of Excellence for Nuclear Security, which has run several regional and international courses under the auspices of IAEA. So India has failed to establish institutional mechanisms in terms of nuclear safety and security. Then also we know that Indian nuclear installations are guarded by what they call the Central Industrial Security Force, which is just another second or third line force, unlike Pakistan's case, where there's a dedicated force which has been specially trained for the purpose of nuclear security. So that's a major difference. However, we must remember that nuclear security remains the national responsibility of every country. The others have nothing to do with this. It is upon every country to make sure that the nuclear materials and facilities in its jurisdiction are kept safe and sound. India is also a member of Nuclear Safety Convention, as well as Convention on Physical Protection of Nuclear Materials and its amended protocol, which require every country to establish an autonomous regulatory authority to ensure safety and security of nuclear installations and materials. Whereas India signed the Nuclear Safety Convention in '94, it delayed its ratification until 2002. I think probably the reason was the reluctance on part of India's Atomic Energy Commission to establish an independent regulatory authority. Then in 2011, they introduced a bill in the Indian Lok Sabha for a nuclear safety regulatory authority, but it lapsed after 3 years and it has not been taken up again, which shows that there is a great degree of reluctance on part of India's nuclear establishment to have any independent autonomous oversight mechanism in the form of a nuclear regulatory authority. So technically speaking, they are not in full compliance to their obligations of Nuclear Safety Convention as well as the Convention on Physical Protection of Nuclear Materials. And that's a worrisome thing, because it then has the potential for leakage of materials. Today it is 7 kilogram, tomorrow it may be much more. But the pattern always is that it's difficult to take out 100 kilogram or 50 kilogram at a time. It is always in small installments that people pilfer the material from, whether they are doing it from the uranium mine itself or from any processing facility.
Right. Ambassador Akram, now on the basis of what Dr. Naeem Salik is saying, there are two things that I want to get your view on. One is that if, heaven forbid, if this story had come out of Pakistan and we had nabbed 2 people with 7 kg of natural uranium, the Indian government and media would have gone to town with this and launched a major disinformation campaign. I see that we've been fairly quiet. There's been one statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but the media has generally been quiet. That's one thing, and I would like to get your view on that. And secondly, as I said, you've been, at the Conference on Disarmament. You've been involved in multilateral diplomacy with reference to, things nuclear, conventional, biological. So give me a sense of how you view India's safety and security measures. I mean, Dr. Salik has talked about quite a lot of what India needs to do. But I want to get a sense of why the developed countries like the United States, France, even Russia and Australia, all extremely eager to sign these nuclear deals with India. They also want to get India into the nuclear supplier group. Is there something we can do to exploit the actual reality on the ground with reference to India's responsibility, the lack thereof?
Okay, let me address your second question first. This particular incident that happened a few days ago is around, I think, about the 11th or 12th incident that has become known in the public domain about such material being found in possession of people who are not supposed to have that. And so this underlines the fact that there is a definite leakage of nuclear material within the Indian system, and Brigadier Salik referred to the national responsibility that every country has to protect that material. But the fact that so many instances have come to light indicates that there is very loose or perhaps very non-existent control, I would say, in this regard. So now, as far as the weapon, yes, it cannot be converted into a nuclear weapon. But since it is radioactive, and if you have a large enough quantity of the material, it is possible for someone who knows what to do with it to convert it into what is called a dirty bomb. And basically trying to establish or trying to create some kind of radioactive impact in a large populated area. So this is the danger, that it's not really about nuclear weapons, it's about loose nuke material which can fall into the wrong hands and can be used for terrorist purposes. So this needs to be locked down by the Indians as much as it needs to be locked down by others. Now, why has this not created a human cry? And you're absolutely right that if there was even 1 kilogram of such material that was found in Pakistan, there would be a storm in the West. So I think the reason is obvious, that it is because of the strategic partnership that exists between the United States and India. And this has come out very clearly. In fact, it's not just my saying so, but the Nuclear Threat Initiative, the NTI, it's a non-profit organization in the United States that tracks the policies of governments for protecting nuclear materials. And that only involves non-weapons use nuclear material. Now, in the NTI's ratings, Pakistan actually rates quite high. It has, for almost a decade, ranked higher than India. The other countries that are ranked lower than India are Iran and North Korea, because their programs are not transparent at all. But the fact is that Pakistan has a better track record than India. But this is a fact which is not recognized in the world. In fact, the NTI itself acknowledges that people in the US government have stated that they are not ready to take a tough line against the Indians because of the strategic relationship. Now, the second question is, what are we going to do about it? Unfortunately, I have always argued that we need to be more proactive. It's not just enough to raise, to make a statement by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We need to take these things up with the IAEA at least, if not with the other governments that are really in favor of this kind of nuclear controls. The IAEA has a responsibility, even as a part of the Nuclear Security Summit process, which was launched by President Obama. And in that process, when it concluded, the IAEA has been given the responsibility to continue to track these kind of nuclear materials. And the IAEA has a responsibility to ask the Indians to share with it what are the measures that they have taken, because they are obviously not working. If you have about 10, 12 incidents of this nuclear material falling into the wrong hands, and there is obviously some serious problem. So I think that we need to be more proactive on this issue. We need to take this up with the IAEA and in other relevant forums. Even the CD is a good place to start. But as I said, we need to be more proactive in this regard.
Absolutely. We need to be more proactive. That was Ambassador Zamir Akram speaking with us. Before I wrap up, very quickly going back to Dr. Naeem Salik. Dr. Salik, Ambassador Akram talked about the dirty bomb, essentially, which is the common name for a radioactive dispersal device. How far, let's assume that, there's more quantity of natural uranium from which you can extract a bigger chunk of U-235. There is also the issue of cobalt-60, which is the synthetic radioactive isotope and artificially produced in nuclear reactors. So technically, tell the viewers with reference to what would be easier to sort of, have in terms of creating an RDD, and also what kind of damage an RDD can do.
Well, Ijaz, as far as RDD is concerned, uranium is certainly not the ideal material for this. It's too costly for that, and it's not that effective. From that point of view, cobalt-60 and cesium-137 are much more suitable for an RDD purpose, and those materials are available in the medical machines, the diagnostic systems we have in the nuclear medical centers and the MRIs and all those, the CT scan machines. So those sources are available in medical laboratories, and they can easily be pilfered from there. The safety and security standards in case of those materials are not that high, and they are more useful in terms of RDD. As far as RDD is concerned, they do not actually cause mass casualties. It is only the amount of conventional explosive in which this radioactive material is wrapped in, and the people who are in close vicinity, maybe 5 or 10 people, or maybe less than that, may get injured. The only thing is that it can disperse the radioactive material over a large area, and the biggest problem would be the panic it will create. It is not going to create casualties, it is going to create panic, and also the decontamination of that large area over which this radioactive material spread, that will be very costly. So that is the effect of RDD. It has been overblown, but if it is not put in the right perspective, it can create a disproportionate amount of panic, and which is not a good thing.
Absolutely, I completely agree that it's been overblown, but it's been overblown for a reason. One, of course, the entire narrative on terrorism, and secondly, it makes for very good TV seasons on. So, which is why it's good to overblow it. But thank you so much. That was Dr. Naeem Salik speaking with us. This is all from In Focus this evening. We shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Keep following our latest updates on social media at indus.news. And yes, as I always say, given the third COVID-19 wave, stay safe and follow the non-vaccine safety protocols. Good night and goodbye.